Hello everyone, it's Alice from Rock Paper Shotgun, and I'm joined by Katharine.
Hello.
And she's played 80 hours of Octopath Traveler. No one on the video team has had the chance to play it because of the whole 80 hours thing, but Katharine has, and she's going to tell us a little bit of what she liked and what she didn't like about it. It's been out on Switch for a while now.
Yeah, about a year, I think.
About a year.
Roughly. I think it came out, last summer. It's just arrived on PC in shiny, new PC form.
Is there a noticeable difference between the Switch version and the PC version?
Yeah, definitely. The PC version runs at 60 frames per second for a start, which just looks so much better and just feels like it runs a lot smoother than on the Switch. Just watching all the battle animations and the effects and everything in smooth 60 frames per second, really lovely. And obviously it supports much higher resolutions as well. The Switch was obviously limited to just 1080p, but I've been playing it on a little bit on my 4K monitor and it looks amazing. And yeah, it definitely feels like this is in terms of graphics and general quality, this definitely feels like the definitive version of Octopath Traveler.
I've never touched a JRPG because they always look really daunting to me.
Yeah.
They always look huge and like deep, and there's loads of things going on, and I don't really feel like it's the kind of thing I can sink my time into. But for those of us who don't know anything about Octopath Traveler, can you tell us a bit about the story?
Yeah, so Octopath Traveler is quite an unusual JRPG in that you have this great big party of 8 characters, and each one has their own individual story, which is what most of the game is about. There's no real overarching story to Octopath Traveler, like, traditional JRPGs. They have, there's a big baddie at the end trying to take over the world, and you've all got a band together to save them. That's not the case here. This is very much it's quite low key, so everyone's just following their own individual stories. So you've got 8 characters, and each one has a kind of 4-chapter story.
Which doesn't sound too long.
It doesn't sound too long. Ironically, I finished the game on 80 hours on the dot by the time I'd finished that 8th character. So it does take quite a long time to kind of get through them all.
Yeah, incidentally, by the way, for those of you watching this video, I have not played 80 hours of the game. I've played a few hours, so that's the capture that you'll be seeing today along this video. That just sounds impossibly long to me.
It is long, probably made longer by the fact that they all follow a very similar structure. You go to a town, you kind of you chat to some key characters for a bit to kind of move the story along and kind of get your objectives for that particular chapter, and then you go to a dungeon, do a bit of fighting, you fight a boss, and then that's the chapter done. But you do that for like 32 times. It's the same.
That's a lot.
Each time, which is a lot. And as I say, by the time you've done that 8th character, it's just like, oh man, I'm quite glad that's over. The stories that I did like, I really liked Ulbrich, the warrior, he's the character that I started with. I should also point out that, you can pick any of the 8 characters to start with, and then go around the map recruiting whatever characters you like in whatever order you like.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to just play one character's story and then do the next one. It's all kind of, everything's in play all at the same time. Partly why it took me so long. The way that the chapters are structured and that they all have a recommended level. So you more or less have to do everyone's, say, chapter 1 before you can really attempt any of the chapter 2s because you're not high enough level to really do it properly.
So they all have different stories to tell, but is there anything else that makes them different to one another?
Yeah, so each character is basically, they embody a different type of job class. So you have Ulbrich, the warrior, who's your kind of standard tank character. You've got Therion, the thief, who, does steal stuff and is very fast and all that sort of stuff, classic thief JRPG kind of character. You've got your mage, whose class is technically a scholar. He's a kind of professor-type character. You've got a cleric, who, your standard healer. You've also got a merchant called Tressa. Her story is all about, going to all these far-flung places in the world and finding stuff to sell, which is a really weird story, one of my least favourites. But there's also an apothecary who's sort of a healer, but is quite handy with an axe, called Alfin. He's pretty good. I liked him a lot. And then there's a hunter called Hannett, who speaks in quite ye olde English.
Oh right, okay.
Which is interesting. I had to switch over to the Japanese voice actor for her because it's just a little bit too much.
Oh okay.
But aside from that, they all do quite good. Like the voice acting is generally quite good.
Okay. Are they all fully voiced then as well?
Yeah, all fully voiced. They do quite a good job with kind of getting in some regional accents in there.
Okay.
And by JRPG standards, I've listened to some quite grating voiceovers in my time, but this is definitely one of the better ones, I think.
Okay.
So each character has their own sort of different job class, which affects, at least when you start out, that can quite dramatically alter kind of your style of play and the way that you approach enemies. I started with Ulbrich. I played him in one of the demos on the Switch and quite liked him and thought have a good strong tank, kind of a strong attacking character to start my journey off.
It's
a solid foundation move. But equally you could start with like Primrose, who's a dancer who has a little bit of magic but is also more about like character buffs and kind of strengthening a character or making them faster and all that sort of stuff.
So perhaps better for later on down the line.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, if you start with her, she's probably one of the more difficult ones to start with because she's not particularly strong. She can't really heal herself unless you kind of use items and stuff. So the early game, at least, you've got quite a lot of variety in how you approach things.
Okay, so you have a party of 8 people, but you can only have 4 people at a time, right? So
yes.
So is it kind of the thing where you have to choose strategically which people kind of match up with each other, or?
Yes, to an extent. I mean, you once you've picked that first character and completed their first story chapter, you're more or less free to roam the map and recruit everyone as you see fit, really. You can do it in any order and pick whoever you want really to form that initial party of 4. You can swap people in and out. So the only one you can't take out of your party is the character who you picked first, which is fine if you picked a good one. As I say, I picked Ulbrich, so he's a nice strong warrior character and he was really quite useful throughout the game and came to be one of my favourites. But yeah, I think I'd probably find it a little bit irritating perhaps if I'd started with Primrose. She has her own strengths and weaknesses, but I don't think I would have wanted her in my party for the entire 60 odd hours it took me to complete do the first complete 4 chapter story arc. As I say, you can swap characters in and out whenever you like. It is quite crucial that you do that, because if only to keep everyone at a reasonably similar level, because people on your bench unfortunately don't level up at all. So I ended up with a level discrepancy of about 30 by the time I finished the game.
Oh wow, okay.
Because I ended up keeping 3 characters in my party who were my favourites, and then rotating in that 4th character for whoever's story chapter I was doing at that point. Having a well-rounded party, it's not so much all about everyone being at the same level. It's having a good variety of weapons and magical attacks at your disposal. Because one of the great things I really love about Octopath Traveler is the break and boost system that makes up the core of its battle system. So each character is protected by a kind of shielded defense, and you can only really do like mega damage once you've broken down those defenses, which you do by attacking them with sort of certain weapons that they're vulnerable to.
Okay.
Underneath each character, you'll probably see there's a little line of tiny little question marks. Those are the character's weaknesses, and you can only kind of unveil those as you kind of hit them with the correct weapon. And I really like that element of it. It's kind of like its own little puzzle, and working out, you do spend maybe a little bit of time at the beginning of each battle if you haven't encountered that enemy before, just literally whacking them with everything that you've got. So it can sometimes feel like, you're just kind of chucking stuff at a wall and seeing what sticks. But once you work it out, you think, oh, great, okay, I've got these things at my disposal. This is how I can break down their defenses. And when their shield gets to 0, they're dazed for basically the rest of the turn, and then the turn afterwards.
Oh, okay.
Which is when you can really, really lay into them. What's great about that is that there's also, on your side of things, there's something called the boost system. So every turn you get a little boost point.
Okay.
And it's quite similar to, if anyone's ever played the Bravely Default games on the Nintendo 3DS, it's very similar to that, in that you can kind of save up turns or kind of take multiple actions in the same turn by storing up these boost points. And in Octopath Traveler, you can boost up to, I think, like 4 times per turn if you've got enough boost points. So you can kind of level up your attacks and kind of do, you can do 4 separate attacks, which are all, because the character is dazed, they're stronger than normal. Or you can use one of your special attacks and kind of do a mega damage.
Okay.
That's really satisfying, kind of balancing those 2 systems and making sure that you've got the boost points to take advantage of that quite small window when they're broken. Essentially, it's one of the few JRPG battle systems that I feel like I've truly mastered, and I've got complete control over everything that's going on. Yeah, it's definitely one of my favourites.
Okay, is it one of your favourite bits about the game as well then, or did it ever feel repetitive?
Yeah, like it's definitely one of the things that kept me playing and kind of bore me through those kind of slightly less interesting character arcs. Like, the music is really good. Like, I love the battle music, and I love the soundtrack of Octopath Traveler in general. Like, it's one of my favourites, probably of like all time. You know, it's got a really lovely folky kind of music that goes on in kind of the towns and the when you're out in the wider world. But the battle themes are just brilliant. You know, they're kind of really kind of toe tapping. Like, yeah, you know, we're gonna mess up some monsters right now. You know,
Nice.
That's definitely, yeah. Like, as I say, I really like the music and just the sense of like each battle, even though you are kind of facing relatively similar-ish enemies most of the time, apart from the boss battles, they always sort of come in slightly different kind of combinations, and you've still got that kind of puzzle of working out how to break people and how to kind of manage the battlefield, really. The battles never got boring.
Okay.
And some of the boss battles are really good as well. Like, there are moments in quite a few of them where, you know, they completely change all of their vulnerabilities just like, you know, on the fly. And then you kind of, you know, then you've got to work it all out again. And it's this process of it's just a really fun, like, living puzzle, the battles. You know, it always kind of throws you a curveball that you've got to kind of react to and figure out, while keeping everyone alive, which is sometimes a bit difficult.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got one character who's 30 levels below the rest of them. Yeah, the battles are definitely one of the strongest things about Octopath Traveler.
Coming to the end of this then, how does the end game stuff feel? Is it a nice reward at the end? Do you feel like it's fully rounded? Did you like how the end game came about?
Well, it's kind of difficult because the game just sort of ends. By the time I got to the third and fourth chapters, everyone, I was starting to tire of it a little bit. Not only just because you were kind of doing the same things over and over again, but because the recommended level for everyone's sort of final chapters was so high that the only way I felt I could do it was to have those 3 core characters and just kind of rotate in that 4th one, because otherwise I would have to have spent hours grinding away and leveling everyone up, and like, the game, there's just not enough to it to support the way that it's structured itself, if that makes sense. Plenty of side quests, but none of them give you any XP. It's all money and items, which isn't really helpful in terms of especially making up that shortfall of XP when characters are sitting on the bench and you do want to level them up fast. Like, it doesn't support its own characters in that way. While it's perfectly possible to get through the game the way that I did, you know, to have 3 core characters and rotate in a 4th, the actual end game definitely requires them all to be definitely a lot higher than what I ended up with. I actually had to go and look it up, how to access the end game, because the game just doesn't tell you anything. When you get to everyone's 4th chapter, there are hints of a wider story, you know, there's this kind of recurring theme that keeps cropping up in everyone's stories, but it doesn't actually tell you how to get there or what it is, or even if that is even a thing that is a thing to worry about, you know. Like, when I finished the 8th and final character, life just kind of went on. It was all fine. Like, I didn't actually have to save the world, or it wasn't really in any great peril. In fact, I put it in peril by going and activating these particular side quests and unlocking that final proper endgame area. So I probably should have just left things alone, really. It's kind of a classic case of like, oh, there's a big red button that's going to destroy the world. Let's press it. When I could have probably not done that and walked away and still been perfectly happy. So it does struggle toward the kind of the latter end of the game, mostly because I don't think it has the structures in place to actually, apart from the classic massive grind, I think some players will struggle to kind of hit those level targets in a way that's satisfying and kind of worthwhile in a sense. But there are still things, you know, that I do really like about Octopath Traveler. As I say, I think it probably could have been quite happily a quad path traveller, perhaps, instead of 8. Because yes, by the time you've done 8, it does sort of tend to drag its heels a little bit. But as I say, I love the battle system. It's one of my favourite things ever. The soundtrack's brilliant. You know, there were character stories that I enjoyed. Maybe only half of them were good, or that I enjoyed anyway. I've seen a lot of people say that, you know, the ones that I hated, everyone really liked, apparently. So maybe I'm in the minority there, but
bit of something for everyone.
Yeah, there's definitely, you know, because it's all quite individual little stories. You know, people might resonate with different things. I quite like Ulbricht's story, he's as a knight who he sort of failed to protect his king, and he spends his little character arc kind of wondering, why do I wield my sword now? Who am I to protect when I fail to protect the most important person? And it's kind of a very similar vibe of like, what the hell am I going to do with my life now that I don't have this thing to do anymore? Which I think a lot of people can probably relate to.
Especially when you leave uni.
Yeah. I know I've certainly felt that way a lot of times. So yeah, I quite enjoyed his story. And Therian the Thief was also another favourite of mine. He gets his hands caught in the cookie jar a little bit.
Oh dear.
And then must use his thieving powers for good. And he learns loads of valuable life lessons along the way, which is quite, heartening.
Well, that's wholesome. I like that.
So yeah, there are definitely little story gems in there. But yes, maybe not quite all the same standard for me. But
that's fair enough. I think that's fair enough.
I think there's definitely something for everyone in there.
Yeah, maybe it would have been good if you could have chosen 4 and not had to have leveled up all the other 4 as well, if you didn't want to.
Yeah, or just, a lot of JRPGs, they just level them up sort of not at the same rate as your other characters, but at a kind of just a slightly slower rate, so they don't get completely left behind.
Yeah.
Just something like that would have been brilliant.
A little bit of XP share.
A little bit of XP share, yeah. Definitely could have done with one of those.
Oh. Well, thank you very much for telling me all your thoughts and feelings about Octopath Traveler. If you want to read Katharine's full review, it's up on Rock Paper Shotgun, the site. She goes into a little bit more depth in that, and yeah, you can leave comments and chat to Katharine about it there, or leave comments on this and chat to Katharine here as well, because we'll read your comments and we'll reply to them. But if you did enjoy today's video, please do like it and make sure you're subscribed to Rock Paper Shotgun for more stuff like this.
The flame guides us true.